Right now in the UK, the far right are being emboldened and encouraged by major political figures. And the government are doing very little to address this. My name's Naomi, and this is my sister Natalie, and we're the founders of the organisation Everyday Racism. Today, we want to share with you a series of events that change the whole trajectory of our lives, and you never know, it might even change yours too.
It all started on a train in 2019. I stepped off that train, my body shaking, adrenaline pumping, and tears rolling down my face. But what I didn't yet realize in that moment is I just found my purpose. A purpose that will not only change my life, but the lives of thousands of others. But before I go into that, let me tell you a little bit more about us. We're cute, aren't we? Yeah. So we grew up in a seaside town in the southeast of England called Margate. Margate was a popular tourist and holiday destination for Londoners in the 18th and 19th centuries. And then when package holidays became the norm, sadly, tourism declined, and so did the town. Rundown houses, socio-economic challenges, and vulnerable people being housed in the area, it became a hotspot for the far right. It wasn't uncommon to see groups such as UKIP or the BNP or even neo-Nazis marching and protesting along the seafront.
When we grew up in Margate, it was the 1980s, and we were often the ethnic minority in most of the spaces we inhabited. We both later moved away. I went to London and Natalie went to Brighton, but we returned to our hometown, and that's where we live now. But the landscape has changed dramatically. It's not without its issues, but we have a thriving art scene. We have lots of people that have relocated from London after lockdown. We even have a black and brown community group, which we never thought we would see happen. And some people refer to Margate as Hackney by the Sea. We knew that we wanted to make a difference in this world, but we weren't always sure what that looked like. Fast forward to an evening in October 2019, when I got a call from Natalie.
And here's what I said. I was sitting on the train, and the carriage was full of people, when I noticed two white men step on. Now, one of the reasons why I noticed them was because they'd obviously been drinking and they were making a lot of noise. The ticket conductor, a black man, had just politely acknowledged me in the form of what we call the nod. If you know, then you know. I watched as he walked over to the two white men and asked to see their tickets, and unfortunately, they responded with racist abuse, saying, "Well, have you got a passport to get into the country, mate?" I watched as this escalated, and I got my phone out and I pressed record. Now, shortly after, one of the men tried to justify that he couldn't possibly be racist because he's got two mixed-race children, I stood up and I said something. Now, what I said was not perfect, and if I'm honest, I'm not sure if it really made much sense. And it's not the first time I've intervened in a racist incident, and it won't be the last. And usually, I'm the one on the receiving end. But what stuck out for me this time was this. Nobody else said anything. The carriage was full. Dozens of people were around us, watching, staring, ignoring. So why was it that the only people to say anything were the two black people on the train?
When we got home that evening, we talked about how whenever we'd experienced racism, whether it was in our workspace, in our friendship groups, at school, why nobody ever said anything. And actually, sometimes we were asked to debate whether racism was even an issue. And we knew that there were so many people that would have felt that way and experienced this. And that's when we decided to start a space where people could talk about their experiences of racism in the UK. And that's how Everyday Racism was born. It was in our bedroom with a laptop and a phone, an online space where people could share their impact of racism and how it affects them in a UK context.
And Everyday Racism has grown dramatically over the years. We have over 240,000 followers on Instagram. We've written 2 books. We've become a community interest company. We've spoken at events all over the world. And we deliver anti-racism workshops to thousands of teachers and students across the country. We also help to lead a campaign with other fantastic organisations where we are lobbying the government to ensure that racism is seen as a safeguarding issue.
We had no idea that setting up the platform would change the trajectory of our lives. There was no team, there was no funding, there was just us and a friend who taught us how to make graphics for social media. But what we did have, and what we still have in abundance, is a purpose. We were so sick of the narratives that were coming out of the UK. Racism's not really a problem in this country. We're so tolerant. I mean, who wants to be just tolerated? The willful denial of racism as an issue in our schools, teachers not knowing how to hold those conversations or deal with racist incidents, the government gaslighting people, the denial of our role of the colonization and the dehumanization of Black people and people of color globally. Now, these are a lot of issues to unpack. And sometimes it can feel like, how can we make a dent in any of those? They're systemic. So when it feels like that, we look to this quote by Ursula Wolf Rocker. It can be overwhelming to witness all the injustices of the moment. But the good news is that they're all connected.
So if your little corner of work involves pulling at one of the threads, you're helping to unravel the whole damn cloth. One of our biggest lessons that we've learned on this journey is how interconnected our struggles really are. Divide and conquer is the lifeblood for the ruling class. If those in power can convince working class communities that immigration or trans people or climate activists are the problem, then they can maintain their wealth and their power.
One of our heroes, Fred Hampton, understood this. He was a young Black activist in the US, and he brought together people from vastly different backgrounds under what he called the Rainbow Coalition. Young, working class, white people, even those that used to fly the Confederate flag, denounced their racism in recognition that there was a common enemy, the elite. They came together and worked with the Black Panthers and Puerto Rican communities. It was such an important and disruptive alliance that Fred Hampton was assassinated in 1969. The thing about change is that we have to recognize the interconnected nature of oppression. People experience oppression very differently, but racism, anti-Semitism, transphobia, anti-Muslim hate, ableism, misogyny, these are all systems of hierarchy, and they erode our humanity.
So, in order to make change, we found our thread. Educating people in anti-racism work, helping people to see how racism shows up in everyday life, and also looking to change the education system. That's the part of the cloth that we're helping to unravel. It might change, it might evolve, but for now, that's where we want to focus our energy. And look, I know children are not born racist. It's taught, it's learned, it's reinforced, and it's sustained through the systems that we live in, the systems that surround us, the systems that we work in. So that's why we work with schools and teachers to help them understand what it's like for a student of colour in the classroom, or to help them see how the curriculum can uphold and reinforce white supremacy, and also how to deal with racism when we see or hear it in our school communities. This work is not small, but it's essential, and we can't fix it all, but this is our contribution to the wider picture. And I'm so grateful for the people that came before us, our ancestors who paved the way and laid that foundation for change so that we can continue their work and continue their legacy, but we can't do it all. That's why we need to find our piece of the puzzle so that we can channel our energy in order to find our purpose.
And it doesn't mean that we ignore other issues. It just means we have to acknowledge how they interconnect. If you're somebody that is fighting for climate justice, then you should also be fighting for racial equality. As Fannie Lou Hamer says, nobody's free until everybody's free.
So, you want to make a change in the world. We believe everyone can because everyday actions lead to everyday change. I love this quote. "What can I do?" said 8 billion people. Because it shows us the power that we have as individuals and humans. But think about the change that we can make if we work together. Think about what we could do and change if we worked as a collective. And the good news is that in order to start, you don't need a big funding pot. You don't need a big social media following. You just need to know your purpose.
And if you're not sure where to start small. There's people who are already doing brilliant work. Join in with them. Offer your time, your resources, your energy, your ideas. And if you do see a gap, look at how you can bring others along with you to fill that. In our local community, 2 women, Kelly and Victoria, saw that we were in desperate need of a space and a community group for Black people and people of colour. So they started People Dem Collective. And we now have a community centre where we host cultural events, healing, learning opportunities for those of the global majority. The art world can be really tough and elitist to break into. So 2 local artists, Lindsay and Guy, opened a gallery on the high street that is actually spotlighting working class and marginalised artists. And from that, Gemma has developed a working class arts programme, which is fully funded, helping people to break into the industry. Near where we live, there's a church, and in the garden of the church, unhoused people and people struggling with addiction gather. The local pizza restaurant saw this, and so every Sunday, they open with volunteers and make sure that people have a free hot meal and food to eat. Plug into your local community. Find out what the need is. We often think of things on such a national level, but making change right where we are is so important. It's those small, interconnected acts that lead to big change.
And you don't need to have all the answers. Some of the best people don't. You just need to have a willingness to learn, the courage to stand up for injustice, and a purpose that drives you forward. So I want to leave you all with this question. What is your thread? What's the part of the cloth that you are helping to unravel?
find your thread, find your purpose, and let that guide the change that you want to make in this world. Thank you.
Thank you.